Well, hello everyone. How are you doing? Good. It's lunchtime, so I know you guys are halfway in your day. But I'm super excited to be here with you all. So yeah, as Felicia said, I am going to be sharing a little bit about storytelling and what that is, and hopefully that you guys can gain some just some insights into not only what I do, but hopefully you can leave here with some tools to help you tell your story a little better. So I want to start off with this quote. So it's one of my favorite quotes by Maya Angelou. And she says this: "There is no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside you." And I won't share much about Maya Angelou, but if you know, obviously, maybe you guys know who she is, maybe you don't. But she was a phenomenal poet and writer. But as a child, she actually was abused. And so for years, she never spoke until, obviously, years later, she began to tell her story. So we're going to talk a little bit about finding your brand voice and how to identify that and what that actually looks like. So today, I want to share with you how I found my voice through vulnerability. And ultimately how I built Nomolos Creative. So I founded Nomolos Creative 3 years ago, and we are a creative market agency that we really help nonprofits, churches, corporations find their voice. And through branding, through storytelling, through social media marketing, and web design. And so this is right here. So that's who we are. So we're going to talk through that. And basically, our mission is to help companies bring their dreams to life by navigating their voice and their branding. But our mission today, if I can go through, is this. And this is what I want to leave you guys with, is one, we're going to go through, understand what your brand voice really is, right? Number two is how basically it's more than a logo represents you. Oftentimes I'll sit with people and they'll come to my office and be like, "Well, I already have a logo," and I'm like, "Cool." That's the first step. But your brand is more than your logo, right? And then thirdly, we're gonna go through, our mission is how to find and define your story. Does that sound good? Yeah, so listen, my background is in ministry, so I like when people actually talk back to me. So are you guys doing good? All right, okay, good. All right, so the next thing that I want to share with you, so I grew up in a very, I would say, disciplined and creative home. Am I good? Can you guys still hear me? Is it going in and out? It's going in and out. Testing 1, 2. All right, let's do that. So I grew up in a disciplined but very creative home. So my dad was in the military, and he was very militant. Yes, sir, yes, ma'am. You're respectful. You're on time. You do your chores. You make sure your bed is made every single morning. But then on the other hand, my mom was a gospel singer. So she was always singing. She's sung and opened up for Dave Matthews. She opened up in the Olympics Medalist Plaza. So she was very creative and exuberant. So on one hand, I had my disciplinary dad, right? Yes, sir, yes, ma'am. On the other hand, I had my mom, which was very creative. And so what I love, though, about this, at our dinner tables, it would be very structured, but then very creative. And if you know and if you've been a part and been introduced to a creative, or you have a friend that's creative, we're not structured. Right? Like, we love to do what we want to do, and there's no box that you can put us in. We're outside the box. We think outside the box. And so with my mom, when I sat down with her, she always taught me how to dream. Always. She's a big dreamer. And so I remember as a little kid, we would sit down at the dinner table, and she would talk to my sister and I, and she'd be like, "What do you guys want to do?" And I'm talking like 8 years old. Like, what do you want to do? What do you want to be? What do you want to accomplish in life? And so as I grew up, I had this understanding of what that looks like to dream big dreams. My mom said there's no dream that is too big to dream, right? And so I remember as a young age, I sat down and my mom was like, "Why don't you just take some time and just write in this journal?" She handed me this journal that I still have to this day. My mom is no longer with us. She passed away about 3 years ago from cancer. And I had this journal that I wrote in at 8 years old. And as a kid, I remember watching Disney Channel original movies, right? And so I love Disney Channel. I just love watching them. I love watching dances. I loved watching all the actors, That's So Raven, all of it. And I remember back in the day, and I still don't know if they have it, they'd have the wand, the magic wand. Yes, yeah. They would have the magic wand, and they would paint the picture. And so I remember just sitting down, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to write something down. And so as a little quiet boy that's reserved, I'm totally different now than I was then. I was the kid that literally sat in quiet and silence, and nobody knew that I could even really speak, right? And so I remember writing down in my journal that I wanted to be in a Disney Channel original movie. And so this was 8 years old. Then from here, I started dancing at the age of 12. So this is actually at the Delta Center in the front, opening up for the Disney, I think the Disney ice skating people were there in town, and so we opened up for them, and we did some dancing outside. And so I remember that one moment when I wrote in my journal, and so dance became my outlet. I didn't know how to verbally speak to people. I didn't know how to share my thoughts. I didn't know how to share my dreams, but you know what? I started using dance as a tool to tell my story. So when I was mad, guess what I would do? I would dance. When I was sad, I would dance. When I was happy, I would dance. And so I used this as a tool. Years later, not only did I started dancing at 12, like I said, but I began, and I remember writing in this journal, but I had an opportunity. I got a phone call from a choreographer friend of mine and saying, hey, they want you to audition for a Disney Channel original movie. And so I'm going to share with you, this is the movie that I was in. That's me in the black, or the blue shirt right there. High School Musical. So keep in mind the 8-year-old boy that was quiet, now with full of attitude. And so I got to be in this movie, and here's another clip. Oh, sorry. So this part I really love a lot, and the reason why I'm sharing this with you is not to brag that I was in this movie, right? But to show you that this point right here, the director, Kenny Ortega, this is not choreographed. He literally called me out right before this scene and said, hey, Andrew, I want you to come to the front, and I just want you to freestyle. Now, mind you, dancers, we love choreography. We love to be stationary. We love to do things that's well rehearsed, right? And so in this moment, this was an opportunity for me to step out. And so after I filmed this movie, I went back and I had my journal, and I thought, wow, I actually wrote this down, and I'm actually living out the dream that I wrote down. So then not only was I had the opportunity to be in one movie, but the second call for High School Musical 2 came up, and that's me in the yellow in the very back. So not only by me writing one Disney Channel original movie, it also exceeded my dreams and my expectations, and then now I was in 2 Disney Channel original movies. And what I love about this, we didn't know that High School Musical was going to be the fanatic and have the awareness and the fun that it was going to be in the first movie. We just knew that we were excited to be living out our dreams. And so this was a dream that I'd written down in my journal as a kid, now turned into reality. As I can be certain that I'm not the only one in this room, this step naturally happens. Fulfilling a goal and a dream can easily spark many more, right? So once we see this happen in our lives, we start fulfilling one dream, and then the next dream comes to life, and then the next dream comes to life. And what I love about this is when I sat with Felicia about 2.5 months ago, when she asked me to come speak, I loved it because I could just see the passion and the exchange. We just started telling the story of where our background, where we came from, what we love to do. And it was just a mutual exchange of conversation. And so not only did this happen, I began to just spur on more, because as I started dancing, I started getting more confident, right? I started continuing to tell my story. So even years later, this is me now. This is about a couple of years ago. I started dancing on this company called Junction Dance Company. It's a local artistic company here in Salt Lake. So this is lyrical movement. So this moment was a pivotal moment for me. I was in transitions from what I was doing before, trying to figure things out. And then now to professional dancing on stage. We did about, my time on the company was 4 years. We did about 15 different shows within that 4-year span, dancing in front of thousands of people. To now, my daughter, this is my daughter Sylvie. And what I love about living out your dream is that it not only impacts your life, right? It impacts the generations behind you. And so the importance for me in this is that not only did I step out and do what I love to do, now my daughter is now dancing for Junction, which is the company I used to dance for, and living out her dream. She's a lot like me, and so quiet, timid, but with dance, she gets to speak her voice and be seen and be heard. And so as we continue, I want you to leave with some practical steps. So after all of this, I realized that when I set out to dream a dream that was bigger than me and to tell my story and to be vulnerable, there's many other opportunities, not only for my daughter to dance, but the people that I am around to be a part of my story. So starting Nomolos Creative was an act of vulnerability. At the end of the day, like many of you and your nonprofits and your companies, it's an act of vulnerability. It's stepping out and fulfilling a dream that is bigger than you. And so dreams plus vulnerability, what? Equal businesses that make an impact. So vulnerability is, like we all know this, we've heard this word vulnerability a lot, right? Vulnerability is the willingness to show up and to be seen. To show up and be seen, like many of you in this room. So even when we can't control the outcome, it's about being open to risk and uncertainty. Since in this group we're not short of dreamers. Are you guys all dreamers? We're going to get a show of hands. Dreamers have goals and ambitions in life that you want to accomplish. Let's get practical, because we can live up in this cloud, right, of dreaming and wanting to have the biggest nonprofit in the world and wanting to accomplish so many things, but we also have to have practical steps in telling our story. And so I want to go through the importance of storytelling for a moment here. I love this because this kind of helps me break down just different components, and we use this as in our organization, we use this as key kind of baseline form for us. So number one, understanding vulnerability. So it's embracing vulnerability allows you to present yourself genuinely, breaking down barriers and fostering deeper connections, right? Number two, we want to make sure that we are making things personal. And you've heard it already this morning, right? People love stories. People love to know who you are as a genuine person. So make it personal. Sharing personal stories and experiences helps to create a deeper emotional connection to your audience, right? And number three is build connection. This is my favorite. I love going to networking events. I probably attend about 6 networking events a week because I love building connection. I love getting to know the people that are shoulder to shoulder, that are on mission here in Salt Lake City. And so by being open and vulnerable, you foster trust and empathy, allowing your audience to connect with you on a more human level. And so by sharing our vulnerabilities, we create deeper connections with others. This is the foundation of a compelling storytelling. Seeing a need, and then what? Being moved by it and taking action. And so next is this. So dreams combined with vulnerability, to reiterate, create businesses that make an impact. The next thing that I want to look up is talk about is creativity unspoken. This is a term that we at Nomolos Creative, which Nomolos is Solomon backwards. Everybody asked me, where do you get that name? It's Solomon backwards. But this is a phrase that we use often in our organization. And we like to say this, creativity unspoken, where creativity lends itself to unspoken words. So when I first started Nomolos, like I said, was in a transitional period of my life where I wanted to help other organizations bring their story to life. Because a lot of us have those unspoken words that might be in our journal that it's hard to maybe articulate and bring to life. And so that is our motto at Nomolos Creative, is that we call it creativity unspoken, where creativity lends itself to unspoken words. We bring companies' dreams to life by helping them navigate the voice and their branding. It's about telling your story and the lives you've impacted by changes your organization and the changes your organization makes. So a compelling story takes time to develop and build, right? We all know this. And I want to throw out some stats because I think that it's important that we realize and know the importance of storytelling and that it really can't be secondary to our mission and has to be the forefront of who we are, right? And so these are stats that we as an organization go off of as well. So 81% of consumers need to trust a brand before making a purchase, emphasizing the need for authentic and transparent storytelling. 66%, hear this out, of consumers feel their relationship with brands is one-sided, indicating that many brands fail to share enough about their values, vision, or story. And this is the last one I want to leave you with. Only 55% of consumers remember a brand story over a list of facts showing the potential loss impact when companies do not employ storytelling effectively. So this shows you right now, 51%, if that's all you take, 51% of companies do not tell their story. And so that shows you right there that we're lacking this, especially in nonprofits. And this is why I'm so passionate. When I sat with Felicia, I was so passionate because I was like, I love nonprofits. And the reason why is because if I sat with you guys individually, you could tell me your story. But if I get on your website, if I get on your social media, if I were to get on any platform that is outside your brain, I wouldn't know your story. And so the reason why I sought out to do and start Nomolos was because I love listening and hearing people. Actually, the best comment that we ever get when people tell me is that, one, we're collaborative, and then two, they love working with me because I listen. Because at the end of the day, this isn't the dream that I've been given. This is a dream that you've been given. And right, all we're doing is we're lending our creativity to yours and helping you build your brand. So, lessons learned. So these are some of the lessons that I've learned, and they're not hard. Like, I think sometimes we overcomplicate it as CEOs and business owners and entrepreneurs. We overcomplicate life. These lessons are not hard, right? So the first lesson here is this. Write down your dreams and goals. Say it with me. Write down your dreams and goals. I learned that at a young age, and I'm so grateful that I had a mom that really walked me through all of that, because without her, I wouldn't be where I am today, right? And so the first thing that you have to do is just write it down. That's the first step in being vulnerable. Nobody knows. It's just in your little notebook, in your cute little journal. But that gives you a sense of confidence. And then when you go back to it, you can see and reiterate. And so writing down big vision, where you see your company, where you see your nonprofit, whatever that looks like, write it down. The next thing is just express and share your dreams. This gets a little bit harder because oftentimes, we don't want anybody to put a pin and a bubble into our dreams, right? So it's like, hey, this is the thing. I want to keep this secret. I want to just hold on to this. Holding on to it really isn't going to help anybody, and it's never going to be accomplished. So express and share your dreams. And then the third thing is believe in the possibility. So the reason why I shared the story of Disney with you is because I actually began to believe that it could actually be accomplished. And so you have to find the right support, right? I need to go back to that one. So how to find the right support and how we can help you tell your story. And so basically, we love supporting, like I said, we love supporting nonprofits, organizations really tell their story. And in a moment, I'm going to share with you a story that we've produced. And so the next thing is process of discovery, right? So we guide people in discovering their process. We listen, We don't talk. I don't say, hey, this is what I think you should do. We listen. And then we go off what you believe that you want to accomplish. And the third thing is this: we love impacting lives, right? That's why we set out to do what we're doing. You know, whatever you are wanting to do and accomplish in your life, it's ultimately to help others and impact others that are around you. And so I want to conclude by this. This is one of my favorite stories that we as Nomolos Corporation, we've produced. We've worked with over 75 companies in the last 3 years. Helping them tell their story. But this particular story that I'm about to share with you is about a couple who they grew up in Kenya, and they now live in Salt Lake City, husband and wife couple, Judy and Nixon Kasue. And they came to me and really were just expressing, hey, like, we have a story to tell, but we're just not sure how to tell it. And so they're a real estate investment company here in Salt Lake City. They own multiple businesses. They are doing great. But their mission really at the core is not to make money just for money's sake. It's actually to go back home and to build water wells for their community. And so I want to share this story with you.
A plane goes up over us. As it's going through, I look up and I say, God, that's my cousin. How far do you think the airplane is? He looked at me, and what he told me was pretty interesting. It was very telling, and it changed my life, literally. So he looked at me and he smiled, laughed, and he said, for you, the rest of your life. I thought, wait, what do you mean? He says, you will never get inside that plane. And I thought, my gosh, never is a pretty long time. And I thought, no. I smiled back and I said, I will get into that plane one day. He laughed and he said, no, you probably never will. It became my lifetime mission to do that, to figure out how I can get inside that plane and go wherever it goes. I don't care. I didn't care where it was going, who it was carrying. I just knew of 2 continents. I didn't know too many of them. So I knew if there was America, there was United States, and there was Europe. So I figured it's either going to Europe or America. So my mission was, I want to go to where if it's Europe, I'm going there. If it's America, I'm going there. How? I have no idea. As a young boy wearing no shoes in a village in the middle of nowhere, how do you do that? So my desire to get inside a plane and my belief that I could get in a plane was born that day.
So now we want to help you tell your story. So I would love to talk with you guys afterwards and maybe set up a meeting with you. But it's just not enough to tell your story, right? It's how you tell your story that matters. Thank you so much.
I love storytelling. I think it is such an incredible way for us to create shared humanity, to really get into the depths and the soul of why we do the work that we do. Because by raise of hands, does anyone feel that they are being paid what your worth is for the work you do? Anyone? I did not think so, right? We don't work for nonprofits for the pay. I would love to see that changed one day, but we're not there yet. So it's because of the passion that we have. But you sort of left us on a cliffhanger of tell your story, and I would love to talk to you why. Can you give us just a little bit of the nuts and bolts of What does storytelling look like in our organizations?
Yeah, so this is a great question I get often, is because storytelling, what it looks like is being vulnerable and authentic at the core. Oftentimes when we start a company or we start an organization, we come up with our, obviously, like our values, our mission, our vision, and that's part of it, right? But sometimes we lose sight of the us factor that is in this organization, right? And we get so high level that we miss the transparency and the vulnerability that should honestly be taking place. And so storytelling, to me, it looks different for every single person. But if I sat with you for 10 minutes, I would know how to brand your story. I would know how to put that into practical application. That would be through a social media post. That would be through your brand guideline. And I don't know if you notice it, but in that brand that we produce, they're a real estate firm. But it was important for them to go back to their roots. So in that logo, it's a house, but then underneath it is roots. And so that was a simple way that I listened to that. I'm like, well, they're about going back to their home. They're doing this not to make a buck. They're doing this actually to build water wells in Kenya and to go back to their home and to build their communities there. And so for me, it was important to hear, okay, hey, the business is the real estate, but the heart at the end of it is the roots that they carry, and him having belief that he can get on a plane to live a dream and to have a dream to accomplish, so he can ultimately go back and build his community. So storytelling really, at the end of the day, is being your true, authentic self and not getting so corporate, because oftentimes we start to miss it there. Corporations start to lose their feel, and nonprofits, to me, should be the greatest. We should be the greatest storytellers on earth.
Yeah, thank you. We've already got an audience.
Fantastic presentation. So one thing that we try to do at our organization over there is play around with what the branding looks, feels, sounds like, depending on the nature of the project that we're about to take on, because it's usually to signal some kind of expansion in the scope of work we do. What advice would you have for creating mutations and permutations of a brand without losing sight of what the brand originally feels like?
So are you talking about like rebrands?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So we have to look at this too. When I'm talking to a collaborator, we call them collaborators. So that's just terminology for clients for us, because I feel like in our organization we believe that clients are so transactional that we want to call them collaborators, because we want you to join in with us, right? But if you are looking at a rebrand, you have to pay attention to the roots and the history of what was, and then now what is and what's going to be. And so you have to be future oriented, right? But you also have to stay deeply rooted and grounded in what's presently there. And so for me, what is important when somebody comes to me for a rebrand, I first identify what they love about that brand and what they have. And a lot of times it's because most of the time, it's the first version of that brand, and that brand was produced 10 to 15 years ago. So at the end of the day, they're just really excited because it's what got them off the ground, and now they're still a company, right? And so I look at that and say, okay, hey, well that was, right? But like, what are we moving into? So we're gonna honor this, and typically what that looks like for me is different for every single person. But like, we have this collaborator now that he loves blue. So the old logo was in blue. Right? Everything was blue and white, blue and white, blue and white, blue and white. And so what I did, he's like, hey, we want to rebrand. So what I did and how I honored him in the blue was I said, hey, let's do a different shade of blue. We can still do blue, we can still do what you love, but let's reinvent the wheel a little bit and move forward to 2024. I think they first did their brand, they're a 20-year-old company. Did it 20 years ago, 2004, so it's completely different. And so how I honor that is I see what was, and then I actually try to get them to visualize and see what can be, the possibility of something new, right? And even with particularly the Pioneer Ventures, their roots are Kenya, so they use a lot of greens, browns, and they wanted it to be like a little bit more ancestral, right? So I use those deeper colors, and use literally the ground. I dug up I remember having a conversation with my branding guy, and I was like, hey, like they love like roots. And so he took literally like the red dirt and like created like this color palette of the brown that's in it. It's a shade, it's not their main thing. Their main thing is green, right? Because they wanna make sure that their hometown, right, is now full of life and vibrancy. So green shows that. So you honor the past, right? But then you move forward to the future. But how you do that can look differently in many different ways. So, yeah.
Yeah, and that was just a great reminder that if anybody has a question, please just come up to the microphone. Yeah. Or if you don't want to walk, also raise your hand. We'll call on you. That's not a problem. We talked about this a little bit with the last panel discussion, but I think it's something that is incredibly important, and that is, how do you balance the authentic voice of the people that we're serving and really drawing in that emotion, but also being conscious of tokenism? How do you bring in the diversity of the voices, the people that we serve, without putting them out there as this token work that we're doing?
Yeah, so for me, we do, so we actually work with this company called Beauty from Ashes, and they help with, it's a woman-owned company, and they help tell the story of abused women. But for us, how we've chosen to do that, because not every single abused woman wants to have their face on social media, right? It's a very sensitive topic. It's a very sensitive subject. And so the ones that, we've had a few that are willing to do that, but we blurred out their face. We've had a few that have written some poems about their story, that I had another girl that was on our team just record the poem. And we used that poem as part of their social media in telling their story, right? So I like to be really creative and figure out different ways, because honestly, for your organization, the best way that you can tell your story is by using the people that have been impacted by it, right? And there are those moments that we have to do that, especially if you're raising money, fundraising. We just did a 3-minute video for another nonprofit, and it's all for donor-based. So we had to tell the story of different people. And so there's times that you can do that. But in the social media world, let me talk specifically social media, how we do that is different. We use quotes. We use, like I just said, like some couples, or a couple of women wrote some individual poems that when they were going through the abusive relationship, they had all of these deep ingrained poems. They weren't willing to share their face, but they were willing to give us this poem, and somebody else recorded it, and we actually used that as tools in getting their message across, in telling the story of this company. So yeah, there's different ways that you can do it, but I try to find ways that are simplified without having to use a person. Now, I'll honestly say, and this is the thing that I struggle with too, you are your greatest storyteller. You are. Nobody can tell the story of your organization how you can, right? And what you want to be and what you want to accomplish. And so how you do that every single day is that you continue to tell the story of lives that are impacted by saying, hey, we had so-and-so, and you don't have to name the name and do all that, but you had so-and-so, and she went through this program, or blah, 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 and her life was changed because of it. And now she has, she's living a life of X, Y, and Z, right? You can tell those stories in different ways.
Fantastic. So we're talking about impact and storytelling, and for me, while I love storytelling, I also love data, and I think data is so incredibly important because it really guides the decisions that we make. If we're using storytelling in one component and it's not really working versus storytelling in another component, how do you measure impact of storytelling?
Yeah, wow, that's a great question. So for me, we measure it in a couple different ways. As a company and organization, we measure it through practical ways of, like, we do surveys after with our collaborators, just to say, hey, how was your experience? And that's part of us getting data and tracking. But for organizations, especially if there's not like a measurement, or as far as like you're not doing consumer products, right? So a lot of times we do those companies too, but nonprofits, you don't have like a consumer product where you're selling and you know the return on investment, right? Yours is going to be quantifiable by the stories that are being told back to you, right? Through whether that's an email, whether that's text messaging, whether that's They're telling their experience with their friend, or they invited their friend to come on board with your nonprofit or whatever that is. And so those analytics are tracked a little bit differently, because you have to measure the lives that are being impacted by it, not what you are necessarily giving them as the product. You have to measure the lives that are being impacted by it. And so this is why storytelling is so important, and why, because it gives us fuel to keep going. At the end of the day, when people tell me stories like, oh man, we really love, or when I get referrals, it's because companies loved working with me enough to tell somebody about me. So that, to me, is quantifiable data that I use, because they were able to contact me and say, hey, you worked with so-and-so, we saw what you did for them, can you do that for us? And so you have to be able to measure it in different ways, but write those things down, and then over the year, track it to see, because at the end of the day, it's the fuel that keeps you moving forward, to keep doing what you're doing, right? So.
All right. One last question, and that is, if you were to give everybody a homework assignment today about storytelling, what would that homework assignment be? What is one thing that they can walk out of these doors and do right now?
Yeah, so I would challenge you all, if you have not done this yet, and this is what I did when I was crafting Nomolos, is that I would turn on literally my iPhone, and I would start recording me telling the story of what I wanted Nomolos to look like. And for me, that's how Creativity Unspoken came out. I literally have it on an audio recording of like, thinking when I was a kid, I couldn't speak it verbally, but I had it written down. Creativity Unspoken, right? So I would challenge you, especially if you're not in the social media world or doing anything like that, literally set your phone up somewhere where you can sit down and have a conversation with yourself and start dreaming up what you want to accomplish with your nonprofit, with your organization, and challenge yourself and hear it, listen to it, review it over and over, and hear yourself tell your own story.
All right. With that, can we give Andrew a big round of applause, please?